Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven. Today, our special guest is Jane Ward. Jane is the author of Hunger, The Mosaic Artist, and In the Aftermath. After graduating from Simon's College, she worked in the food and hospitality industry. Later, she became a contributing writer to an online food magazine and a blogger, an occasional host of cooking videos for an internet recipe resource affiliated with several regional newspapers. Most recently, she has contributed book reviews to Story Circle and Mom Egg Review. She loves to travel and to document her trips through travel photography. Jane lives in Ipswich, Massachusetts. So, welcome, Jane.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, you've had a very interesting career path. So, you started off in food and then became a novelist. So, how did your
Yes.
writing journey begin?
Oh gosh, I have to take you all the way back to my childhood, where we had a childhood of books and cooking in my house. So it was no surprise that I was drawn to both when I had to go out and make my way in the world. But I've always wanted to write. I had a mother and an older sister who loved to read to me. And as a result, I was reading at a very early age myself. And I was a shy child. So I kind of could lose myself in stories. And I also had a lot of imagination and I did a lot of daydreaming. So I would make up stories in my head. So I've always entertained myself that way. It's gotten me through some difficult growing up years. But it's a tremendous privilege now to be able to entertain others with the things that I dream up.
Now, did you end up, I guess you were a writer and you were working in the hospitality industry.
Yes.
Like, what kind of work did you do?
I was, for a long time, I worked for a caterer, planning private parties. I worked in a restaurant in Chicago, planning private parties. I've also been a baker. I've worked in a convention and visitors bureau, doing, bringing people into towns and conferences and things like that. So always sort of on the fringe of the planning aspect of things, except for the time that I was a baker when I was actually in the kitchen cooking. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now was there a particular moment that made you realize you wanted to move from food to fiction, like to writing?
Um, you know, we because of my husband's job, we moved around a lot, and I had two young children, and it got to be too difficult we were overseas for a while, got to be too difficult to sort of look for jobs and start new jobs every time we moved. So I just decided I've always wanted to write, so I decided I was just going to set my mind to writing my first novel, and that was obviously finishing something for the first time, which was nice. So that's basically, it was sort of came out of necessity. I needed something to do. I had all the time, other than raising small children when they were off at school. I had all this free time to work on it. So it just sort of everything converged, and it was just a matter of the right thing at the right time.
Now, did you think you gained something in your hospitality experience and travel experience that helped you shape your stories?
I do. I write a lot about food in my books. They're often set in domestic situations, families, and so I do involve a lot of food in there. But also, I think it's helped me because, especially the travel part, because I'm able to sort of write about different worlds that I've been in as well, whether it's working worlds and home or it's travel and back in the United States. I just like to draw on all the experiences that I've had.
Now, after you finished writing something, was it hard to get your first manuscript published?
You know, um, it was, and it's probably the same thing that every writer will tell you they go through is just pitching agents for a long time until you find the one who wants to represent it. I did go traditionally published the first one, and it took probably, by the time I found the agent and the book was sold, it was probably a year, and then it's another couple of years before it actually comes out in print. So it felt like a long process, but I think it's probably a pretty typical process.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about your newest book, The Should Have Told You Sooner?
Sure, should have told you sooner. just to kind of set the scene for you a little bit, is a story set in both present day and the 1990s. So the character at the beginning is almost 50, approaching 50, and she is in the book an art museum curator, and her married life is falling apart, and she has a chance to kind of get away from all of the difficulties she's going through. Her boss comes and says, "We're offering you a secondment to London for 6 months," and she decides this is a great way for me to just sort of put everything behind me and put it out of my mind for a while. So she takes it. However, when she was a student, at 18, she moved to London and she went to university there. So she's also left a very personal, very complicated personal life behind her. And she's now going back to the situation that she left. It's 30 years later. She thinks she'll be fine, but when she gets there, all of the people and the things from the past start to sort of bombard her, and she can't any longer sort of put these memories in the past, and she has to face things. So, and she realizes things are not so easily forgotten or ignored. So that's basically what it's about.
So what inspired this
Well,
story?
it's a strange inspiration, but I was reading a book of Welsh mythologies and folk tales, and I've always been drawn to mythologies and folk tales ever since I was young, and I had never read any in the Welsh tradition, so I picked up this book, and it was written specifically for children, so it was an easy sort of read to get through. But one of the stories in there, sort of like things do, just stuck with me, and it was called The Lady of Llyn Fan Fach, which is a lake in the Brecon Beacons in Wales. And it's a sort of magical story about a shepherd who goes to the edge of the lake, and this beautiful water fairy comes out, and they instantly fall in love with each other, but they're from two different worlds. So I started thinking about that story, and for some reason, that one was the one that stuck with me. And I began to percolate it a little bit in my mind and started thinking about it with modern day characters. And the characters of Noel, who is the art museum curator, and a painter who she met when she was in the 1990s, as a young student. And I started seeing them and thinking about them coming from two different worlds, and also falling in love, losing touch with each other, and what that could be as a story. So that's basically how my mind just kind of turned that over and over and over again until it came up with something that I thought was going to work as a book.
Now, art plays a central role in the
Yes.
book. Like, did you do a lot of research?
I did do a lot of research. In particular, I spent a lot of time. There's one painting in there that she likes very much. Noel likes very much, as ever since she was a young person, and it's a Turner painting. So I spent a lot of time sort of researching that, and it's here at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, so I was able to go and see it a few times too. But the most interesting research I did, in the art realm, was going to a couple of art studios of women artists who were sort of nearby. Um, in the book, one of the artists paints over, he glues letters, old letters, to his canvases, and they're sort of wrinkled and they form lines underneath the paint. And I found an artist in Massachusetts, by the name of Sue Fontaine, who paints by she puts dress patterns on
Yeah.
the canvases, and she called it the skin of her paintings. And then she paints over them, and you can see the lines through them. So I went and spent an afternoon with her learning about her process, and she was very generous to take the time to show me what to do. And so I could speak about it when I write about the paintings that are in the book. I could speak about it with a little bit of authority, or at least try to. So yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
Okay, now your story moves between Boston, London, and Wales.
Mm.
And I guess why did you visit those places, or why did you choose those places as well?
Well, gosh, I never really know exactly why. I just sort of take off, and things come to me. But I love London very much. I've been going there since I was a young person myself. I love it very much, and it's a place I'm familiar with, but familiar in the way that Noel's familiar with it as a person who did not grow up there but spent a lot of time there. So I felt like I could write that from that perspective. And I sort of, in a way, wanted to write a love letter to a city that I love very much. And Wales is just a magical, beautiful place. And when I decided to sort of jump off from that mythology that I was telling you about earlier, I just really thought this is a really kind of interesting place for the two of them to come together again after 30 years to see what happens. Because, like in the mythologies, anything magical can happen. They consider it sort of these magical places like the lakes. They consider them to be like the meeting place or the converging place between the real world and the supernatural world. So I just thought it was going to be a fascinating place to set it in.
Now, you explore a lot of different facets of the motherhood experience, like giving up a child, infertility, and step parenting.
Mhm.
Um, I guess what compelled you to write about this?
Oh, I saw Noel as a person who really wanted to have a family, and that sort of experience was in a way taken away from her, from a very young age, yeah, when she's like 20 years old. And then she experiences infertility and she's not able to have a child of her own. And it made me start thinking about all the different ways we lose out on experiences, I guess. I'm a mother myself. There's a lot of talk in the book a little bit about estrangements and people losing connection. I think these are things that everyone experiences at some time in their lives. So I just started to delve in, and I began to see her as this person who had a tremendous amount of longing in her. And that sort of drove the story. It drove the reason why she went back and started to look into her past without giving any spoilers. But yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, writing. So you've done a lot of book reviews and writing
Yes.
about art and food.
Yes. Yep.
So does does that help inform your own work when you're crafting your books?
It does because it's a format you have to follow, which when I'm writing novels, I'm not a person who plots very much or outlines very much. So to have the discipline of staying within a form for writing either food articles or even more so book reviews, and to do it within a certain amount of words is a challenge to me. I write novels for a reason. I don't write poetry or short stories because I like to use a lot of words. So it's a challenge, and it's kind of a good way to keep your brain thinking critically about books too. Which, when you're in the middle of the creative process, you're not necessarily thinking, "Is this working?" You're just doing it, and then you have to go back and revise and think about all of those things. What fits together? Is this working here, or does this take the reader out of the story? So it helps me in that respect too, to think a little bit more critically.
Okay, now, do you have any advice to give to aspiring authors who also want to write? I mean, you've done it for quite a while, so.
Oh gosh, everyone is going to have a different journey when they start out and to where they will end up. I think the best advice I can give to people is probably just build your writing community. Show up for your work every day, whether you're able to write every day or you're able to think about what you're writing every day. At least commit yourself to showing up. Build that community. Find the writers, find the readers, find the editors, and get to know them. Think of yourself as part of that world. The minute you think of yourself as being part of that world, you will become part of that world. And the last thing I'd probably tell people is just learn to love revision. Just love to revise your work and desire to put out the best possible finished work that you can.
Okay. Now, how do you keep your creative well filled? Like, how do you keep your inspiration going?
Well, I do have this imagination that sort of goes crazy at times. I do a lot of I have a couple of dogs, so I'm always out dog walking, and I'm not one of those dog walkers on her phone all the time. I just sort of let them sniff things, and my mind's just going a little bit off into different tangents. But I love traveling. I love the act of photographing places. Not, I'm not so great at photographing people, but I love photographing places. And I think just looking at things with your eye as a visual person helps me sort of working when I have to write something that is a visual scene. So those kinds of things kind of keep me going. Just shaking things up a little bit and trying different things. But especially working in a different artistic medium like the photography. I just find that's really, really replenishing for me.
Now, do you have a favorite place in the world?
Well, besides London, probably, gosh, favorite place anywhere really there's an ocean. I just love the
Mhm.
ocean. I don't live too far from the coastline here in Massachusetts, which is great. But we just spent some, in September, we did some long walks on the Welsh coastline, and it's just a magical, beautiful place. And I always feel like very relaxed when I'm at the seaside. So.
Okay. Now, do you have any new projects coming up?
Well, I'm in the middle of writing a sequel to this book. You know, usually the characters, once you finish a book, the characters will sort of fade away, like friends you haven't seen in a long time, and every once in a while you'll think about them. But these crew are not leaving me alone, so they feel like they have a little bit more of a story to tell. But then I have a couple of other ideas that I'm still percolating right now for a couple of other novels. So always going to be busy, I think, as long as I'm able to. I just keep doing it.
So, Jane, you're going to do a reading for us. Can you give us a bit of context and tell us what you're reading before you start?
Sure. I'm reading a chapter from Should Have Told You Sooner. Instead of starting at the beginning of the book, I am starting in the beginning of the second section of the book, which takes us back to the 1990s and some of Noel's first days in London. Because that's really where even though I don't start at that place in the book, it's really where her story starts. So I thought I would read you this chapter, and it's called The Disco. The Disco, November 1990. The dance beat pounded, steady and unvaried. At the song's chorus, the press of people on the disco floor raised their arms into the air in unison, while colored lights strobed, illuminating the floors and walls and bodies. Noel stood apart from the scene, looking down from the balcony where the drinks were sold. She nursed a gin and tonic. She couldn't stand the sweet, yeasty smell of ales or cider. Discotheques were unfamiliar to her, and she was too self conscious for dancing. Alone up here, she felt out of place and conspicuous. She had come at Callum's urging, but knew no one in the crowd well except for him, and he was currently one of the arm wavers down in the crush of moving bodies. As she watched them, her overactive imagination conjured a fire breaking out, a stampede that might block a mass exit from the disco, the newspaper story she might not live to see the next day, death, disaster at the disco. I should go home, she whispered to herself. You must come out tonight, Cal had said earlier that day on their way out of the lecture hall. He had linked his arm through hers and batted his eyes at her until she laughed. He was the first friend she had made at university and now her closest one. You know I'm hopeless in crowds, she had protested, while still laughing at his mugging. Even introverts need to blow off steam after the grind of exams and papers. You'll see the minute you get out on the dance floor, you can be alone in your own world if that's what you want. She had taken a beat to give some thought to what he said. Oh, all right, she finally agreed, but only because you look so pathetically sad when I tell you no. Cal and his easygoing ways had put her at ease from their first meeting over books at the bookstore. Other students in her course had acted aloof at first, wary of potential rivals. The art history college was competitive. Museum jobs in London were scarce and highly sought after. Such circumstances didn't breeze easy camaraderie, and it didn't help that she was from America, still trying to find her way so many miles home from home and her grandmother. But in a few short months, Cal had managed to endear himself to her and to a large network of friends and acquaintances, male and female, foreigners and locals alike, both in and outside of university. He especially believed in balancing study with dancing. He was also a good friend. Noel knew he'd look for her when he came up for air, and if she wasn't there, he would be disappointed to find out she had ditched him. Resigned, she sighed and sipped her drink. Different server tending there who would be more generous with the ice. Blocking her view was a young man dancing by himself, eyes closed, shoulders loose, his head bobbing and keeping time with the synthed beat. He was breathtakingly good looking, not cute, not even handsome. Beautiful was all she could think about him. Sleek dark hair that looked blue-black under the recessed lighting of the bar alcove, and long enough to curl slightly at the nape of his neck. Olive skin, maybe. It looked it, but it was hard to tell in the low light. He was compactly built, not short, not tall, and supple, at one with the rhythm of the music. Soccer player, maybe, she thought. Football, she corrected herself, and she watched him a moment longer, certain he was too lost in the music to notice and take offense at her staring. She smiled, shook her head at him and at herself for watching, and then looked back out over the crowd. The song was ending finally, and she could see Cal below, searching the balcony for her. When their eyes met, he held up a finger for her to stay put, and he started to push his way through the other dancers. As she waited for him to climb the stairs, a new song started, opening with an odd trill of plucked guitar strings, followed by a simple chord progression on the keyboard. It was a song she knew, she realized, one her mother had sung to her often when she was in second or maybe third grade. In any case, only a short time before she'd had to pack up and go live with her grandmother. Ellie would play this one song from her favorite album over and over, picking up and dropping the needle each time it ended, saying to Noel as the song opened again with those first few funny plucked notes, "This is a song about us, sweetie, about how we'll always be together." She hadn't heard it since she was a child. It was slow, a love song, nothing like the hard-driving dance music that had been playing all night. Cal appeared at the top of the stairs. "Noel," he called across the room, "you missed..." But the rest of what he said was lost because someone behind tapped her on the shoulder, and she turned to find the beautiful boy standing before her, his hand outstretched, palm up, fingers wiggling, calling for hers. He was smiling, and now that his eyes were open, she could see they were blue. "Dance with me," he said. "I can't dance to this one alone." "Do you know who that was?" Cal asked as he and Noel headed for the doors to leave. Noel shook her head. The beat-driven music had picked up again, ka-thunk, 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 and she needed to get away from it and into the night air. She reached for Cal's sleeve and pulled him along. "Please, let's hurry. I'm awfully warm." Cal offered her a raised eyebrow and a hearty laugh. "I'm sure you are." They pushed their way against the tide of people coming upstairs for drinks and then through the smaller groups milling about the club's foyer until they finally made it outside. The chilly November air was welcome. When Noel exhaled, she saw her breath float forward in a cloud. "Bryn Jones," Cal said. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your dance partner." He tipped his head in the direction of the front door. When Noel shrugged, he said, "Bryn Jones. He's in fine arts, already won some prizes prior to uni. I hear he's quite good, quite focused. He's also quite gorgeous, which is objective fact, not hearsay like the rest of it. I must say I'm a bit miffed you wouldn't dance with me down on the floor, but you picked a stranger on the balcony to do it with, and to a song by Genesis of all things." Genesis, yes, that was the same name on her mother's favorite album. She could remember its title now, too. And then there were three. "I didn't pick him," she protested. "I didn't even speak to him. I was standing with my drink, minding my own business, and dancing sort of happened." "Did he ask you for your name?" Noel shook her head. "For the longest time, he was dancing alone. Oblivious, I thought. I think he only wanted someone to dance with during the slower song." She tilted her head. "Genesis, is that Phil Collins?" "Phil is from the Nath phase of Genesis, but yes." "Wait," he grimaced. "You're not a fan, are you? Please say no." "It was a song my mother liked. She used to sing it to me when I was little." "Oh no, sorry." She had told Cal about her mother's death and growing up with her grandmother. "Makes sense you'd find yourself dancing to it instead of keeping me company." I'll let it go this time. He poked out at her ribs with his elbow, but Noel hardly noticed. Bryn Jones. She repeated the name to herself silently. She hadn't known it when she stood in his arms, held close by his hands clasped at her lower back. Names hadn't mattered. She kept her hands on his chest to feel the steady beat of his heart and her gaze off into the distance over his shoulder. It was true he hadn't asked for her name, but he had instead given her another one. His breath had felt warm in her ear when he whispered, "I think you are my lady of the lake." Noel had drawn back at that and looked at him in the eye. "I'm sorry, what lady? Is this something to do with Sir Lancelot?" Bryn had smiled at that and shaken his head. The song was coming to an end, the chorus repeating over and over into its final fade. He'd moved his hands from her back to her shoulders and kissed her cheek. "Thank you for the dance," he'd said before walking away. "Cal," she said now as they strolled along Bloomsbury Street on the way home, the side of the British Museum to the right, a private park to the left. There were no neighbors or dog walkers in the small gardens late at night, no people with the keys to the gates taking one last turn. "Cal," she said again, "do you know the Lady of the Lake? Is that King Arthur?" "I think probably not," Noel answered, remembering her own similar question and Bryn's shake of the head. "Oh, Nessie then," he said, dialing up his Scottish accent. "She's the only other lake lady I know." They both laughed at that. "Why do you ask?" he asked after a moment. "Nothing important. And it wasn't, was it?" What Bryn had said to her had only been him being cryptic. Probably there was no answer. Anyway, they studied in different circles. It wasn't like they'd ever see each other again. There you
Well,
go.
thank you very much for sharing that with us. And thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Helix Press. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.